Good evening, everyone. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. And if you need food or drinks, definitely feel free to grab some and bring it to the table with you. But I want to be respectful of everyone's time and go ahead and get us started. Thank you for coming out tonight. My name is Trent Butler, and I am the DEI and Workforce Development Specialist here at the Bar Association. I want to give a special shout out and thank you to our partners at the county of Cuyahoga County Department of Law, as well as the Norman S. Minor Bar Association for helping organize this event, as well as the Black Law Student Association of all of our local law schools, CSU, WRU, and Akron. And I want to give a special shout out to the last day of Black History Month. We are celebrating the lived experiences of Black attorneys. And I want to first introduce our opening speaker, Rick Maniloff. He is the Cuyahoga County Director of Law. And before that, he was a partner at Squire Patton Boggs, where he worked for 28 years, representing public sector entities. One of his first initiatives since joining the county last June was working with Awatef Assad on the creation of DEI Strategic Action Plan for the Law Department. This February 29th program is in part an outgrowth of the effort and is intended to explore new ways of exploring important issues and to provide significant networking opportunities. In the legal community, Rick is working with the CMBA on the establishment of the Collaborative, which will bring affordable legal services to those with modest means, a vision that he worked on with CEO Becky McMahon back when he was the president of the CMBA in 2016 through 2017. He was also the president of the Cleveland Metropolitan Bar Foundation, a relatively rare double presidency. Rick cites his judicial clerkship with Judge Nathaniel R. Jones on the Sixth Circuit Court of Appeals as deeply affecting his perspective on politics and policy in general, and on DEI in particular. Judge Jones swore Rick in as the president of the Bar Association. Please join me in warm welcoming the Cuyahoga County Director of Law, Rick Maniloff.
Thank you for the introduction, Trent, and for helping to organize this program. In addition to those whom Trent has thanked, I would like to thank the CMBA for hosting us in their fabulous facilities, to the panelists for coming from near and far to make this event memorable and impactful. And it's my understanding that there will be an opportunity for each of them to introduce themselves along the way here, so I won't do that. I'd like to also thank all of the attendees here who have demonstrated their interest in this topic by devoting a portion of a weekday evening to it in person. I'm impressed by that. And to my colleagues, I'd like to thank at the county, especially Lenora Lockett, who is in the audience with us, our DEI director at the county, and my law department colleague, Awatef Assad, who, as mentioned, has brought her experience in DEI leadership at the Bar Association to help us draft the law department's first DEI strategic action plan last fall. And so on behalf of Cuyahoga County, we are very proud to co-sponsor this event. So I guess I'll be brief in my remarks and just turn it over to the esteemed panelists. I would just say that by way of setting this up, the law is formed and informed by perspective. The broader and the deeper our perspective, the stronger and better our laws, and the stronger and better we are as legal professionals. And so we look forward to actively listening to the perspectives that have been born from the lived experiences of our panelists. And we look forward also to meeting everyone afterward. A little sales pitch with three posted openings within the law department right now. My colleagues and I are very much interested in mixing and mingling with anyone who might have an interest in joining us afterward, after this CLE portion of the session. So I invite you and encourage you to stick around afterward. So I guess with that, Trent, should I give it up to our panelists? Okay, thumbs up.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Lasheyl Stroud. I currently serve as the lead juvenile judge in Franklin County in our domestic relations and juvenile court. So excited to be here with you all this evening as we close Black History Month. All of us know that while during Black History Month, it's highlighted in February, but Black history really is American history. And we are here this evening in the spirit of that to share the lived experiences of the panelists in hopes of being able to create a more informed discussion and how we can all move forward to create an even better and welcoming legal system. So first, I'll have each of the panelists to introduce yourselves, share a little bit about what attracted you to the law and where you currently are practicing. So we'll start first with Ron.
Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Ron Johnson. I work at the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland as the general counsel. I've been there about 4.5 months. Prior to that, I was 24 years at KeyBank, working in various capacities as a lawyer and as a non-lawyer. And I'm excited to be here. I'm thankful for being asked to participate and be a part of this esteemed panel. My interest in the law started probably back when I was in high school. I never really wanted to be like a trial lawyer like we would see on TV. I was always into banking and finance. I actually thought I was going to be some hotshot Wall Street lawyer. I'm not. But I do enjoy financial services and banking. I spent my entire career in financial services. And one thing I will say is I absolutely love being a lawyer. I've had jobs where I didn't practice, and I've had jobs, obviously, where I did practice, but there's a lot of freedom to being a lawyer. And so that's one thing I really enjoy. So that's just a little bit about me. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Leslie Johns, and I am a criminal defense attorney, a partner of AJ Law here in Cleveland. My practice is primarily criminal defense, do some protection order work as well. I don't really know when exactly I became interested, but my mom was disappointed to know that I didn't want to be a veterinarian anymore. And so I had to figure out something to do. And so I took a couple of criminal justice classes in undergrad, and eventually was kind of pushed into taking the LSAT and surprisingly got into some law schools and decided that I would try my hand at the legal field, and the rest is history. So I love what I do. I love the practice that we have here in Cleveland, and I'm so excited to be sharing this evening with you.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Brandon Brown. I am legal counsel at the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company. I became first interested in the law back in high school, actually because of the CMBA. There were some attorneys from a firm here locally at Tucker Ellis who came over and helped us out with our mock trial team when I was a freshman in high school. And ever since then, I kind of got a big bout of bug, if you will.
And what advice do you give when you speak to Black law students in particular?
So when I think of my experience, I always think about mentorship. And it's something that is extremely important to me because it's something that really shaped my experience. So as I stated earlier, I decided I wanted to be an attorney when I was in high school. And that was because I had mentorship at that age. I was able to work at a firm, and Aisha Bell Hardaway was my, now Professor Bell Hardaway was my supervisor there. And I was 13 at the time, instilled in me the confidence to be able to even pursue being an attorney. I definitely understand what it's like to to not really know anybody or even know what you're getting into, right? To even know what it means to be an attorney besides what you may see on TV. And even then, I wasn't seeing people that looked like me. So for me, it was all about mentorship. And from then on, I was able to attach myself to a lot of people who were willing to pour into me. And so the advice that I always give to any law students or anyone who has an interest in the law or any professional field really is to find someone who's in a position that you'd like to be in and ask them all the questions, right? Be curious, but not only be curious, but also have the confidence to want to follow up on that curiosity, right, and be able to ask those questions. So for me, I think it's about mentorship and finding those people, and that really helped me in my journey. I was able to continue to meet people throughout college in the Lewis Stokes Scholars Program, and I was able to continue to do these internships. And then even once I got into law school, I was able to participate in the 1L clerkship program. So there were time and again, I was able to keep making these points of connection, sometimes with the same people and sometimes with new people, all the way up till now. I'm working at Goodyear, and I'm working with someone who was a mentor to me a long time ago, who's now a close friend of mine, Drew Odom, right? So every step of my career, I've been able to make moves because of the connections that I've built. So for me, I think it's all about being able to make those connections and genuine connections and get those mentors.
And Leslie, what role has mentorship played for you? If you could share some advice that you give to younger Black attorneys, as well as the advice that has helped you along your journey.
I 100% agree with mentorship in the field that I practice. There's 5% of attorneys are Black in the United States anyways. So to narrow that down into, criminal defense, to narrow that down into being a woman in criminal defense, there's just a select few people that I have to talk to look to share experiences with. So having mentors to talk to about just being a woman in criminal defense, being a Black woman in criminal defense is something that I value. I'm always open and willing to talk to any student, any law student, about what my experiences have been. If there's any way that I can uplift them and bring them into, our world and what we do, I'm happy to do that because I understand how important it is. The connections that I've made, like Brandon was saying, through different organizations, through different bar associations, have really solidified some positions that I've had. I would not have been able to be a magistrate in certain courts if I did not have the connections through certain organizations and associations. Quite frankly, they wouldn't know who I was if it wasn't for that. And so it's certainly important and valuable to make those connections. And like I said, I'm always willing to mentor anyone who needs a mentor, who wants a mentor, no matter really what field that you really wanted to practice in. And one thing I would say about something that I did not know going into this legal practice. I guess we would think that we, took the bar exam, graduated, have a law degree, that would somehow magically make us accepted or recognized as equal in the profession, and that's just simply not the case. Even today, going into almost 10 years of practice, just Monday, I'm in the arraignment room in Cuyahoga County, and I'm asked if I'm a lawyer. While I'm sitting in the arraignment room, obviously dressed in a suit, waiting for my case to be called, sitting next to a colleague who happens to be a white male. He didn't get asked if he was an attorney, but I did. And I think sometimes when those things happen, which unfortunately happens quite often, but when those things happen, it's just a reminder of the issues with the lack of diversity, the lack of similar faces and familiar faces in the courtrooms that we practice in, because that should never happen. That should definitely never happen, especially for someone who's been in that courtroom for nearly 10 years.
And you raise a very interesting point. I'm so glad that you did. How do you respond in those types of situations? I know myself, I have been licensed for 20 years, and presiding over hearings. We'll have attorneys who will do things that I know they do not do in the courtrooms on either side of me, like when I'm speaking, stand up because they're upset with a ruling that I just gave, as if they're going to walk out and are rushing me along. How do you pause in those moments to respond when you're questioned about who you are, what your purpose is in the room, and still be able to do the job that you came to do?
I'm not good at it. I'm really not good at the response. I guess it depends on the scenario, but one occasion in particular sticks out, in my mind, and it was much earlier on in my career, and I was not in Cuyahoga County. I was in, unfamiliar territory, a few counties over, and I was there for a trial, and it honestly was, probably the first 5 jury trials that I had had, but I was with someone who I considered to be a mentor, and he asked me to be second chair. So I'm there, show up and do what I'm supposed to do. A second chair, I'm ready. I'm going to do the opening. I'm going to do a couple crosses. And the first day went fine with this judge. The first day was fine. We met in chambers, although, there's a lot of condescending tone and a lot of microaggressions about showing me the ropes and, showing me this thing and that thing, like I had never been in a courtroom before, but, didn't say anything. Obviously knew my name because I did an opening statement and introduced myself to the jury, and obviously the witnesses everybody's names had to be placed on the record at some point. But the second day I come back for trial. It's the second day, and everything is eerily different. After I'd done my opening, we go back into chambers. First thing we get there, and the chief prosecutor is now there. There's an assistant prosecuting the case. The chief is now there, and we're having a meeting before we start the second day. And I have, no idea why we're doing this. It's kind of weird. We just, could get started. But I was asked at that moment in time, and I could see on the computer, the judge had the Ohio Supreme Court attorney search website up, and he asked me, are you licensed to practice in Ohio? And I'm like, what do you say to that at that point? Because now you're accusing me of essentially not being an attorney and lying about that. And who would do that in an entire trial on a second day after I've already done the opening statement? And he was putting in my name wrong. So he didn't even remember what my name was to put it in right. So he's typing it in front of me. And then I have to say at that point, you're not spelling my name right. My last name is Johns, not Johnson. So it wouldn't come up. But, the accusation there at that point, at that moment, I didn't know what to say, and I was in a position where, there was definitely a power dynamic that I didn't know what to say. Now my response would be a lot different. Then I didn't know what to say, and then after the day of trial, that trial, I probably cried. But after, we did get a not guilty verdict, so I guess it went okay. But in that moment, I didn't really know what to say. Now I would be a lot more assertive. Now I am a lot more assertive. I know, obviously I know that I'm a lawyer. I know that everyone in that courtroom, other than that person who asked me if I was a lawyer, knows who I am and knows that I practiced in that court all the time. But I wish that I would have known what to say. And I think having these conversations are important with newer attorneys and younger attorneys, because I didn't know what to say in that moment. And I would have hoped and liked when I was in that position to know what I should say when that happens, especially when a judge approaches me like that.
Absolutely. I too remember similar stories going to other counties, not Cuyahoga or Franklin counties, and just remember what it's like when you ride into the county and everyone is looking at you as if you're not, what are you doing here? This perhaps is not a place for you, and then you find yourself in a courtroom in front of jurors. Ron, do you have similar stories, and what do you share with younger attorneys? I agree with Leslie that no one prepared me for those types of things. I too thought that after I was licensed and now I'm an attorney, it was kind of like perhaps I'd be immune from discrimination, and that everyone would know, that I had arrived and I earned the right to be here. So do you have similar experiences, and what do you share with younger attorneys as a part of mentoring Black attorneys to make them aware of your experiences and how perhaps to respond?
Yeah. So what I heard from your story, Leslie, is something that I think that happens to a lot of young Black professionals, regardless of the profession. And I think it's more acute in law because our profession is sort of measured in time, right? So, how long have you been out of law school? How long have you been practicing? And there's a presumption that the longer you've been you've been practicing, the better lawyer you are. And that might be true in many cases. But younger attorneys or people who haven't been practicing for 20 years can be just as competent as a 20-year practitioner. In my case, so I'm not a trial lawyer. I've never practiced before a tribunal. So my entire career has been, working in-house in the corporate environment. And as a young professional, even before I was an attorney, would run into the same kinds of things. I know that for many young people, when I was younger, I felt the same way. I went to school, I got my degree, I'm reasonably smart, I got a job, right? I'm competent, and therefore I should be accepted. And the reality was for me that people just don't see it that way. Getting the degree, getting the credential, that's sort of the table stakes, but then you still have to prove yourself for whatever that means. And that's where I think mentoring or finding a mentor is helpful because it's really the environment. How do you read the environment? I can't speak to this from personal experience, but from what I understand, when you're a trial lawyer and you go into different courts, every court has their own culture, right? And so knowing people that can help you understand, watch out for this judge likes to do these kinds of things, this person's going to say something fly to you, so you have to be prepared, to kind of react to that. And it's the same thing, in a corporate environment, whether or not you're an attorney. So sometimes what I tell people is that you kind of have to develop this thing called emotional intelligence. So, which means that you have to be able to kind of read the room and read the people that you're dealing with, but you also have to be able to read your own emotions. So if you need to take a minute, go take a minute, because especially being young and Black, and I'll just dare I say young Black male, if you react to something in a aggressive way, that's a stain on you, and it's going to be hard to remove. And I'm not saying it's fair, I'm not saying it's right, I'm just saying that's what it is. And so developing some emotional intelligence I think is important. So when I talk to people, that's what I talk about. Is how do you build that emotional intelligence? How do you develop that poker face so that when somebody says something crazy to you, you just kind of look at them and you reflect, and that you don't wear your emotions on your sleeve. Some people can do that well, others it takes practice, but it is a learned skill, trust me, I've seen it. So that's the response to the question.
And do you ever get away from the feeling of, I have to prove myself?
Yeah, so eventually, but that's time. So when you first start out, you don't really know, everyone's a little nervous, they're feeling a little insecure, but the more you do something, the more you realize, you know what, I know what I'm doing. I have skill. You begin to build that self-confidence, because that's really, in my opinion, that's kind of what it really is you have to build up self-confidence so that you can be successful in the environment that you're in. And moving from one organization to the next, going from different courtrooms and different environments, it's a constant, you're always doing that, and so sometimes it could be exhausting, right? But in my experience, that's what you got to do if you want to be successful.
Because if we're honest, it is absolutely exhausting, right? To have the expectation to be prepared, to show up, to oftentimes be over-prepared, to have to prove yourself, and to carry those things with you as you're simply trying to practice law. Brandon, what has it been like for you? Have you had similar experiences? And what advice do you wish that someone would have given you on this road to showing up as a Black male attorney?
So I've certainly had similar experiences where I've encountered both microaggressions and I guess macroaggressions, where sometimes people can be pretty bold about the way that they address you, and the way that they make it clear that they don't think you're competent. I've also dealt with being a younger attorney and seeing some of the politics that come along with that. Ron alluded to that earlier. I started practicing when I was 23, and so when I started working for the city of Cleveland, one of the reasons why I chose to go work for the city of Cleveland is because I knew I would get a lot of experience, and I knew I would be able to get good courtroom experience, and that held true. I was able to sit in on trials very early, and even sit second and first chair on some trials. But that comes with some of those issues that we stated, where people are going to assume that you don't know the rules, right? That you don't know your way around the courtroom, and things like that. I think for me, it is about confidence. But the thing about confidence is that I think confidence is a learned skill and a learned emotion. It's something that, at least for me, did not. In some ways it came naturally, but in others it needs to be built up, and you have to be intentional about it. You have to be intentional about owning your wins and learning from your losses. I don't want to necessarily say downplay your losses. I think oftentimes we are our biggest critics, so we tend to really lean on our losses. And I think it's important when building confidence to try to do the inverse and really remember. I remember when I was in law school, I would say to myself out loud sometimes, remember you already have a degree. Remember that you're already successful, right? You're already living someone's dream. So I think for me, when I come into contact with some of those microaggressions, where it seems like someone is challenging whether or not you even belong in the space, I think for me, it varies depending on where you are, what the situation is, who's committing the microaggressions, right? It could be a judge, it could be a partner, it could be someone who you actually value their opinion, which hurts. And I think that determines how you're going to address it. I don't think there's a one-size-fits-all solution to how to deal with those kind of issues. Sometimes it's a situation where it needs to be addressed right then and there, right? To say, actually, no, I know what I'm doing here, or I absolutely belong in this space. Other times it takes, going kind of behind the scenes, waiting till you cool off, right? Understanding yourself as well to know, hey, if I address this right now, it's probably not going to go very well for any of us. And so, that's why mentorship, again, is so important, because that's when I lean on my mentors to say, hey, this happened to me. Is this normal? Does this normally happen? How would you respond to it? Or how do you recommend that I would respond to it? And sometimes it's good to be able to just talk that out. I think I learned that earlier in my career, having a situation where I was reliant on another attorney to kind of help me with some work I had never done before. And in doing that, I kind of allowed a situation to get really further out of my control. And it led to me kind of blowing an assignment, and it was extremely stressful. And come to find out, that attorney kind of threw me under the bus to some of our superiors and kind of said, yeah, well, I thought Brandon was supposed to take care of this. It's like, well, Brandon was relying on you, right? And but I learned the lesson of, not allowing someone else to have control over my career and over how I look, at least not in that regard. So I think for me, it's just, it's not a one size fits all thing. But as I've encountered it, I think each of those experiences has built me stronger.
I think what Brandon said is like spot on. And I appreciate you sharing that. One other thought, though, that came to mind as you were speaking, and this is something that might be a bit of a bitter pill to swallow. Like, sometimes we do need to kind of sit back and listen, and we may not always get the feedback we need in the way we want to receive it. And I think that's part of the emotional intelligence piece of it as well. Because I remember when I first started, when I first got my law degree, I worked with an attorney who had a horrible reputation in the company, where I worked. People just didn't like him. They didn't like his attitude, but he was a good lawyer, and so I had to work directly with him, and there were plenty of times when his response to me was less than desired, and sometimes I wanted to have some few choice words, but I chose not to do that, and I actually learned a lot just about lawyering from this person. I didn't like his style. I didn't like his attitude. I felt like his demeanor was, less than to be desired, but I did want to learn the actual technical skills. And so sometimes we have to make those decisions. And so, we just have to learn how to measure ourselves. And so that was just another thing that just came to mind as I was listening to Brandon. So thank you. Thanks for letting me share that.
Yes, right, because sometimes you do ask yourself, like, is this normal? Do other people experience this same thing? And where can I find refuge or safety? So Leslie, have you found refuge in other attorneys? Is it decompressing with non-attorneys? Where do you find refuge when you have encountered what oftentimes is normal for us as Black attorneys?
I think decompressing is really a good word to use. I can explain to my law partners here. I can tell her things that happen, but she can't always understand. And she would admit that. She's just like, I can't truly understand what you're going through in that situation. I empathize. I'm sorry that happened to you, but I cannot truly put myself in that position because I am not a Black woman. So sometimes it's decompressing by myself. Like Monday, I'm just like, I might tweet about it and then take a minute and then just move on from it and just again say to myself, like, I know why it happened and it is what it is. I know that I'm a competent attorney. I know that I'm a good lawyer. Whatever comment that was made towards me has nothing to do with me and who I am as a person and what my character is. So I just kind of have to take a minute to brush it off and move on with my day, because ultimately I still had an arraignment to do in 10 minutes. So I had to kind of, get over it. But really decompressing is sitting with it a little bit and really coming to terms with the fact that in recognizing these things unfortunately happen, and I don't like that it is happening. And if there is a point in which we can advocate for education within the criminal justice system specifically, not just the attorneys, but all of the players that are involved, that is what I would want and want to strive for. But sometimes it's just sitting in it and, firing off a tweet about it to release whatever irritation in that given moment.
And so what is it like for you doing criminal defense work, knowing about the gross disparities in mass incarceration, the number of African Americans who are dealing with the criminal justice system as far as it relates to incarceration? So to be able to recognize the reality of that, as well as for you to show up in spite of what oftentimes the normal is like for you when you walk into courtrooms. How do you balance how you feel with all of those realities in what is and what you need to do in representing clients?
Well, I find it, for me, being a criminal defense attorney is a privilege to me. To be able to practice in the criminal justice system is a dream for me. My background is in criminal justice. I did not know, like I said, I wanted to be a veterinarian. Then I decided that I wanted to be possibly a probation officer. I worked in a probation department doing externship. And then I didn't really know what side of the law that I wanted to be on. I wanted to be a prosecutor. I wrote my entire law school essay about wanting to be a prosecutor. And then I worked at the public defender's office in law school and decided that is exactly the opposite of what I wanted to do. And, being and working in this field, really motivates me, knowing what is happening in our criminal justice system, knowing what's happening specifically in our criminal justice system in Cuyahoga County, motivates me to, do the best that I possibly can for my clients. And knowing what the pitfalls are. I know one of the things that I say is like the reason why when speaking to clients generally and wanting clients to retain is I know what it's like. I have, family members who have been caught up in the criminal justice system. I know what it was like for them. So it's of the utmost importance that you select representation that understands some of the traps and some of the pitfalls and some of the landmines that you might come across. And so really, it's a privilege to work in the criminal justice system for me. Every day is an opportunity for me to make it better. And, that's kind of what I strive to do.
And do you feel like you're making it better?
I do. One client at a time. I can't like save everyone, but I really do try to. I don't do a lot of assignments or a lot of pro bono work, just not because I don't want to, it's just time. But I will tell, because sometimes if it's an appointed case, the client's like, well, I want a real lawyer. And I explain, I am appointed to represent you, and I can assure you that I will do the best job that any paid lawyer could do for you. And I really do truly believe that. My law partner can say, like, I don't care, I'll go to trial for you. I know I'm not going to get paid what I would get paid if I was retained, but I don't care. I'm not in the business of just resolving cases to resolve cases. And so, like I said, it's really, I try one client at a time to get justice in some way, even if it's just a drop in the bucket.
And so when you go into courtrooms, like situations that you shared earlier, and speaking of allies, is it your preference that if you encounter, whether it's, the judge or another person in the courtroom asking you openly, if you are the attorney, or saying something, would you prefer for someone else to say something, for you to say something, for the people who are in the room who say, I would like to be an ally, and yes, I heard that? What would be helpful to you in those types of situations?
That is a great question. It would be great for someone else to speak up. I can certainly, in this, where I am in my career now, feel more comfortable. And like you said, confidence is kind of built. Like I feel more confident in being able to speak up for myself and to, explain for myself, like, of course, I'm an attorney, and maybe make a, kind of a rude joke about it. But for, like on Monday, for the white male attorney who I know, because I said, hello, good morning, when I sat next to him, to say, to the deputy, like, yeah, of course she's a lawyer. So that would have been cool. That would have been really nice. That would have been refreshing because that does not ever happen. But that, really, showing up, and I know it, last day of Black History Month, but like you said, Black history is American history, and we're not just Black in the month of February. It's every day, and for people to show up for us on more than one time a year, or every day when they see something that is very obviously a microaggression or even a macroaggression, it would be nice for someone else to have to say something, because we're always in the position of having to defend, and it would be great to just sit back and allow someone else to recognize what just happened.
Right? Like how refreshing that would be, because when you're in that moment, I think you kind of pause yourself too. Like, did that really just happen? Like I'm in an ongoing trial, and earlier this week, it was about 4:30, and the attorney, she didn't want to be there to start with. And so I was calling for us to start the next witness. And she started to comment about, how it's 4:30 and why would we have a witness? And we're still on the record. And why would you call a witness? And that's only 20, 30 minutes. And so I look over at my staff attorney, because I really thought, like, did this really just happen? Right? And again, I know there's no way you would do this in either courtroom to the right or to the left of me. And I had to pause in that moment. And my staff attorney looked over me like, that really did just happen. And so I took a break, regained my composure, right? I know who I am, but oftentimes we have to encourage ourselves, like Brandon said earlier. And so I went back out because you have to know yourself, right? Because if I would have said something in that moment, it would have been on me and not on her. And so I went back out after I had regrouped and had the clients to step out of the courtroom and had a conversation with the lawyers. So now we really are eating into the time that we could have had for the witness, and I still called the witness after that. But I shared on the record with the attorneys, perhaps I didn't lay out the expectations and whose courtroom this is. So this is my courtroom. I go from when I say we're going to go until when we're going to stop. And my expectation is that everyone will be respectful and follow along. Obviously, if you have things that we need to talk about, then we can do that. But we're going until I say that we're going to end, and the expectation is that there won't be any commentary. And from here on, I'm going to interpret that as disrespect, which I don't tolerate. But it is refreshing when you can look over and have someone else to say, that's not right. Because the other attorneys all in the room heard it as well as their clients, and yet I had to be the one. Now, I know it's a courtroom and it's my courtroom, so I need to say something, but it would be nice if sometimes someone else would say something so that we all acknowledge that this actually happened. And I think that's how we can move forward so that people know that I am not going to tolerate this disrespect. So let's just put it all out there, and any of us can speak up when we hear something. We tell our kids, right? If you see something, say something. They have the signs all in the airport. So how about we all do that for each other if we really say we want a more equitable legal system, so that we're not always the ones who have to speak up and say, this is not normal, but it is my normal. And there's sometimes when I just want to be able to breathe and show up and do my job and not have to navigate all of these other things. Brandon, how do you think we move towards a more equitable legal system? And how can we have more conversations like these without us as the Black attorneys feeling like this is our burden to bear, to carry on our shoulders?
That's an excellent question. And that truly is the exhausting part of it all, right? Is that ultimately it feels as though the burden is on us to fix a problem that we didn't really create, but we are the ones who it's most detrimental to. And so I think it's multi-level. I think on one hand, it is about holding people accountable. And that means holding ourselves accountable, and then also holding those bad actors accountable as well, and finding ways to do that at a systemic level, but then also on a case-by-case basis as well as it comes up. And what I mean by that specifically is that I think that, for one, I mean, I don't want to say easiest, the simplest solution is to increase diversity, right? Which sounds simple. It's obviously not simple at all. But I think in general, when there are more of us present, right, when there's more, when our presence is no longer the exception to the rule, then some of the things will hopefully fall by the wayside, right? When it's not as abnormal to see a Black attorney, right, or a Black woman attorney in a courtroom, then it's going to be less likely that people are going to assume that you're not an attorney, right, if they're used to seeing you all the time. And that requires intentionality by places that are recruiting either law students or attorneys. That means looking at different criteria for what it means to be evaluated as an attorney or as a law student. And that means the students themselves being, and the young attorneys being very intentional about the way that they move and making themselves great candidates, right? And so I think that it's a wholesale approach, but it has to be an intentional approach. It's something that I remember having very long discussions with Calfee, where I just left Calfee back in November, we had a lot of discussions over the 3 years I was there about ways that they could not only increase their diversity, but improve the lives of their diverse attorneys while they're there. And we talked a lot about thinking outside the box, particularly when it comes to evaluating talent. You know, if we're seeing statistics all over the place about bar passage, about grades in law school, about LSAT scores that all negatively affect the black community. But yet, when we look at the black attorneys that we have, we're not seeing more discipline. We're not seeing people being disbarred at a higher rate, right? So when we actually break through the glass ceiling that people keep putting in front of us or above us, right, we're seeing us succeed, and yet we're still evaluating us based on the same metrics that clearly don't work, right? So finding those things that are going to be different, right? Focusing on interviews, focusing on lived experiences, focusing on things that are going to be different than just looking at the same things we've looked at before, right? We have to do something different. Clearly, whatever we've been doing has not been working, right? We all have these lived experiences that show that the profession is not where it needs to be. Well, then we need to make dramatic changes, right? We need to hold each other accountable. It's something that at Norman S. Minor, we're constantly trying to talk about ways that we can hold the organizations around us accountable, and ways that we can build relationships. I think that relationships help. And so I think for me, it's obviously there's no way to kind of answer that question in a way where it's like, hey, this is the answer to all of our problems. But for me, it's that kind of multi-layered thing of we have to be very intentional about recruitment, evaluation, and then holding ourselves and others accountable.
Absolutely. So intentional about recruitment, the accountability, holding other people accountable, and yet still, right, show up, be present. How do we balance this, going back to bearing the burden? Is it our burden to bear? Because sometimes it feels like, how do you balance this presenting with this all my life I had to fight kind of attitude, right? It's a real thing, right? Because you feel like you're constantly fighting everywhere that you go, and then sometimes met with the angry black woman stereotype, which it's like, did I have a choice but to fight? Did I have a choice but to speak up? Leslie, do you feel as if it is your burden to bear as we move toward a more equitable system?
I think we should share the burden, but I am not the type of person that will just let someone else do it, because I don't trust that it'll get done. So I don't trust that if we shift the burden to someone else that we'll actually achieve what we're trying to achieve. I think that we have to be active participants, but I think that other people have to step up and kind of meet us halfway. I in no way think that we should continue to bear the burden of it, especially when those around us, organizations around us, firms around us are benefiting from us, and what we provide and give, as far as our talents. And so I do think that, there needs to be more effort. I know it was a focus in 2020, but here we are in 2024, and I don't know that any of the numbers have changed as far as the increase in black attorneys in America, and firms in general. So whatever we thought we were trying to do in 2020 has not worked. I think 4 years is enough to show that. And so I think that there needs to be a lot more effort. And like Brandon was saying, think outside of the box. I don't think that there really was a lot of thinking outside of the box. I think it was just kind of like, okay, we're going to create this, and then let's recruit. But what did that actually yield? So like I said, I'm not the type of person to just not try and not put forth the effort. But I also think that we definitely need to meet in the middle.
And Ron, what do you believe that the role of allies could be in creating a more equitable legal profession?
Yeah. So actually, I think the burden is ours, right? But but to Leslie's point, it's a shared burden, and I think allyship is really, really important. So, I don't expect. I expect black attorneys generally to support black attorneys. Just like, Asian attorneys are going to support Asian attorneys. I'm happy to be an ally to help support Asian attorneys. But at the end of the day, like, we all have our own particular thing that we're focused on. So, but allyship is really, really important because in order to address the diversity issue, it's really about exposure. And Brandon said it. He said he was exposed to lawyers when he was 13 years old. And I don't know if the lawyers that you were exposed to, if any of them were black, but lawyers came to your school and talked to you and sparked something, and fast forward, he's an attorney. And that's what I think we need. We need to continue to do that. And I don't think it just has to be black lawyers showing up for black kids to see, but I do think that black kids need to see what black lawyers look like. As I mentioned with my own story, there was a person that I saw in my community that I was like, wow, I didn't know that could exist. And so it was that exposure. I think we can, support and grow allies to help us in this work. Because at the end of the day, we want good lawyers out there doing good work. And we can all support each other in those kinds of ways. So I applaud the Cuyahoga County Law Department for putting on a program like this. And I applaud employees of Cuyahoga County for spending their evening to have this conversation, because these are allies. These are people that are helping to talk about why this is so important and how can we make an impact, not just on the black community, but any community that where we need to see increased diversity. So that's how I look at it.
Absolutely.
I just want to jump in and just add something to that as far as allyship and some of the burden being shared with some of our allies. But, something that I really that I thought was really powerful at CalFE was that they implemented a program. They called it their sponsorship program. And without being too long-winded, about mentorship versus sponsorship, right? The idea is that your sponsor is going to be the person who's bringing you up in a room that you're not in to maybe get you an opportunity that you otherwise would not have gotten. And CalFE started a sponsorship program there where they paired their minority associates, their younger minority associates, with those on management committee at the firm, the rainmakers, if you will. And I thought that this was such a specific, intentional, and powerful tool. I was selected as part of the pilot of the program, and I was able to build a relationship with someone at the firm who I know was important to the political structure of that firm, right? Something that we a lot of times don't get talked about when it comes to the corporate world or the firm world, is that, like anything, there's politics, there's structure. Frankly, there are some people who are going to have more political capital and social capital in that firm than others. And the problem is that a lot of times in these spaces, as black attorneys, there aren't many people who are in those places who have the ability to kind of pull you up and help you out, right? And we don't get the benefit of nepotism. And a lot of times it's not necessarily that somebody's pushing you down, it's that nobody's really helping you up either. And so what I really appreciated at CalFE was this sponsorship program where I built this connection, and it still ended up being an organic connection, but sometimes you have to decide to plant the seed somewhere and decide to water it and decide to cultivate it, and then it'll grow, right? And I was able to build this relationship with someone, and it led to me getting an opportunity to work on a case in intellectual property, which I never would have gotten that experience, right? And so I was able to increase my political and social capital at the firm at the time because of this connection. And so I put that out there to any companies or firms or just any offices that are looking for specific ways to help increase diversity. A lot of times we talk about these concepts, but I try to ground it as much as possible. And that sponsorship program was something that I thought was a really intentional and grounded way of really pairing you with someone who will then fight for you in those rooms that you're not in, and tell you things like, the reality is maybe you should do more work for this partner instead of that partner, right? Things that a lot of times people don't want to talk about, but it's necessary if you want to advance in certain areas, right? So I just wanted to bring that up, that, leveraging your capital to improve the lives of the diverse attorneys around you is important.
Absolutely. So it's about those intentional connections, the ones that are meaningful with people who do have that capital to be able to bring you along, making sure that we're unified so that when we have opportunities that we can be of assistance to one another, and make a commitment to not put one another down, right? It serves me no purpose to put someone down, especially someone who looks like me, but I should not do that for anyone. To be able to use our positions of authority, whether it's how long we've practiced or if we are the jurist, so the one who is in control of the room, to say, I will use my power and my authority to be able to assist you in those rooms, as well as giving back, right? So making it our business to show up in those schools so that the younger students and the next generation of lawyers can be more diverse because they saw us. I will never forget, I remember being in high school, that was the first time I saw an African-American attorney when she came and spoke, and she was a judge in the court that I'm in right now. So it was like, okay, I really can do this, and not only can I be a lawyer, but maybe one day I can be a judge. And I went on to clerk for her once I was in law school, and then she went on to the Ohio Supreme Court, is now in private practice, and after I was elected, she went back to the Ohio Supreme Court and got special privileges so that she could swear me in. And you just never know the impact that you can have on someone's life. Now, she doesn't want me to share when I go out and speak that she spoke at my high school, because she's like, that's a little bit too much information. We can start a little further down the line. They don't have to know all of that. But at the same time, making sure that we are all visible so people know that it really can be a reality, and that I will put myself out there to be a safe space for you, whether it's a conversation, we can go behind closed doors, but then I will do what I can publicly to promote you and to make sure that whatever I can do, you can use at your disposal so that we can all come up together. What can we do as a community, as Black attorneys, to say, what can we do to elevate the community overall, in addition to the things that we've shared? Ron, what do you think?
How are we doing on time, Trent?
We have like 2 minutes.
2 minutes. So one of the things that my early mentor told me, and this was before I was a lawyer, before I became a lawyer, he said, you absolutely have to be involved in the community in some way, shape, or form. So he encouraged me to, volunteer for organizations, sit on boards, that kind of thing. I personally believe that as lawyers, that we have a duty. It's kind of baked into our, rules of professional responsibility. Encourage lawyers to participate in community activities, to lend our problem-solving skills. The work that we do doesn't have to be legal related. We don't always have to be the, reading contracts and stuff like that. It's about problem solving, and it's about putting things in the context. That's what we learn in law school. That's what law school does for us. And so it's my belief that those are special skills that we are duty bound to provide to the community. So that's the short answer in the 2 minutes that we have.
Thank you. So thank you to Ron, to Leslie, and to Brandon for sharing your stories. It is not always easy for us to be transparent because these are our lives that we're sharing and our actual lived experiences of what we have been through. So thank you all for your transparency here this evening, for your words of wisdom, so that we can all move forward in a more equitable and just legal system altogether. Thank you to the audience for you all listening to us, for allowing us to share and creating this safe, intimate space for us on this evening. We look forward to moving forward all together, with all of us together, as we move to create this more equitable system. Thank you to the sponsors this evening for allowing us to have this opportunity to speak and to share, and we just all appreciate your time.
Thank you, Judge, for organizing us.